For this edition of the MVFC First and Goal segment, we welcome in and go behind the mic with the longtime voice of the Missouri State Bears, Art Hains. Art, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kelly.
It's good to meet you virtually, so to say.
Indeed, same here.
Well, taking a look at your schedule is rather daunting. In the fall, you are the voice of the Missouri State football and basketball broadcast. You work for the Chiefs radio network as a pregame, halftime, and postgame host. And then you also host a nightly sports radio talk show. So I'm sure that there are a lot of fans out there that are curious to know what your typical week looks like juggling everything and how you prep for each broadcast.
Well, it kind of builds as the week goes on, and I guess I could have used a degree in logistics, but we've kind of by trial and error gotten from point A to point B. I mean, wherever the Bears are on Saturday is the key. If I've got a home game, I'm fine getting to Kansas City. If, as was the case a couple of weeks ago, we have a road night football game in Murray, Kentucky, and the Chiefs have a noon game the next day, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
So fortunately, through the miracles of technology like we're using on this interview, I'm really able to do the Chiefs duty from about anywhere.
Okay.
I get to the radio station studios in Kansas City. But in that particular event, I did the Chiefs game day from a conference room at our affiliate in Springfield, having gotten back from Murray at 3:30 a.m. Last year, when the Chiefs had their historic first playoff win since 1993 in Houston, the basketball Bears were playing at Loyola that afternoon. So I went and got connected the night before from the Loyola gym to the Chiefs radio network just to make sure everything would work.
Okay.
And they said, you can just leave your equipment. It'll be fine here overnight. I came back at 11 the next morning, and Porter Mosier's practicing. So not only can't I get the equipment, I can't get in the gym. And I'm kind of panicking here, but Leo, their sports information director, gathered the equipment up in his arms and set me up in his assistant's office. And I did the whole Chiefs pregame from his assistant's office, which really was better. It was quieter and out of the way. And then after the basketball game was over, I reconnected to Kansas City there in the third quarter and did the postgame show. So, again, it's pretty miraculous that you can do things from different places and not have to physically be there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Sometimes flying by the seat of your pants almost.
Well, another example was we were in a basketball tournament in Alaska 2 years ago, which was really not much fun. Took the red eye after the final game on Saturday night, got into Denver about 6 a.m. Chiefs play Denver, but it was in Kansas City. I'm in great shape, except my flight to Kansas City was canceled and the next one was full. So now I can't get to Kansas City for a game between Kansas City and Denver, and I'm in Denver. Dan Israel, our executive producer, who's a miracle worker, got hold of the Denver counterpart of his and said, hey, can Art come to your station and set up? So that's what I did. I rented a car. I went to KOA Radio in Denver, and they had me all set up and connected to my station in Kansas City. So they're down at the other end of the hall doing the same thing I'm doing, only for Denver on the same game, and I'm doing it back to Kansas City.
Wow.
So it worked out. So far, so good.
Yeah. You are a Marshall, Missouri native, and aside essentially from a 4-year stint in the 80s that you went to Dallas, you've been the voice of the Bears for 37 years. What has kept you in Springfield?
Just fell in love with it. When I first came here, SMS, as it was known then, was Division II. And I considered myself and was very fortunate to be 21 years old and being the voice of any college in a Division II school and one with a good following in a good city. Early 20s, everything is new, just starting out, and made a lot of friends and really loved the community, met my wife. Circumstances caused us to look on, and my original plan, like many, was, well, I'm going to do this for a few years, then I'll move up and move to a bigger market. I'd gone to college at SMU in Dallas and had stayed in contact with some people in the media down there. They had an opening in 1981 at the big radio station. It would be the KMOX of Dallas, I guess, KRLD. And I was able to get that job just by my past associations when I was in college down there. So we moved to Dallas. We were there for 4 years, and I got to do a lot of neat stuff. I was the fill-in host on the nightly sports talk show. I was color on SMU basketball. I was kind of the backup to a lot of different things. If I'd stayed, who knows? We might have moved up into some first-tier assignments. But we were pregnant with our first child in 1985 and decided to make a decision to come back to Springfield, be closer to the grandparents. Mm-hmm. In the time that we were gone, the school had moved up to Division I. And Charlie Spoonhour was the basketball coach, and he personally called, and I'd only met him a couple of times, but he had a great way about him of being persuasive, and he implored me, hey, you need to come back here. We need a broadcaster. We're really on the way up. And so we came back in 1985 and have been back ever since and never regretted it.
As I kind of briefly touched on, you host a nightly sports radio talk show, which obviously means you have to give your opinions, both good and bad, about, sometimes the teams that you're broadcasting about. And so how do you balance that aspect? And when have there been conflicts when you've maybe voiced an opinion that, somebody, a team that you broadcast doesn't agree with?
That is tough. I think you have to, over time, build the credibility that you want what is best for the team and for the school. And if people know you're coming at it from that standpoint and not being specifically critical of individuals, then you can get by with that. I mean, I hate to be critical, mm-hmm. but I also hate to not be honest. I think particularly like you were saying earlier, when you're doing a live sports event for a school, the fans, for the most part, want to know you're for that team. But if you do just a one-sided broadcast and, every call, should go your way, and if there's a bad call that favors you, you just kind of fluff that off. I mean, I have a passion for the Bears and for the Chiefs, but I think you have to be honest about what you are seeing. And if you've got that basis of honesty and hopefully credibility, then I think people will accept it if you point out some flaws in the performance and things that can improve.
Since 2008, you've worked for the Kansas City Chiefs radio network as the pregame and the postgame host. And so what in particular do you enjoy about that role? And do you prefer college football or the NFL better?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, the NFL is so nationally and internationally popular, and I've always been a fan. Growing up in Marshall, we would have front yard football games every Sunday afternoon. And usually back in those days, the football Cardinals played at noon and the Chiefs usually played at 3. And, maybe in between or at halftime, we'd go out and play a little bit. And then if the game was really good, we'd stay, and then we'd come back in and watch the end of the Chiefs game. But the thing that I enjoy about the Chiefs broadcast the most is their commitment to putting on a great broadcast. And that, to some extent, is a function of market size, and it's the NFL. But we have 6 people in the studio in Mission, Kansas every Sunday, and then they have 7 more at the game site. So 13 people to put on a broadcast. Oh. And I'm not going to say they spare no expense, but they are very, very committed to putting a good broadcast on the air because, I mean, this is a concept that used to be pretty common in broadcasting, and that is if you have a good product on the air, then people will listen and advertisers will advertise and everybody will be prosperous. And, in a lot of industries now, people cut back and make do with less. But with the Cumulus and the Chiefs Radio Network, they really have a commitment to do things the right way. And that's been the thing with which I have been most pleased with my association there. Last week, oh boy, we had probably a dozen technical issues, which is very unusual. Hopefully not very many of them came out over the air because there were people there to fix them before they really became an issue on the air.
One of the things I find very special about the Missouri Valley Conference is that there's a number of longtime play-by-play radio guys that do both football and basketball. And, Mike Reese comes to mind, Dick Ledke, Gary Rima, Dave Snell, to name a few. What kind of camaraderie exists between the group of you longtime radio play-by-play guys?
Really good. And Mike Kennedy at Wichita, of course, would also be in that group. And, I can honestly say I look forward to seeing each of them when we do games against each other. Certainly we all are very invested in our schools and want our teams to win, but we also are empathetic to what the other guy is doing because we're doing the same thing. So Kennedy and Reese and Ryma and Snell and Ludke and now Brian Fritz is 20 years, I think, at Indiana State. So we're kind of one of the callers on my radio show. He had his daily call sponsored. I think he had some type of injury earlier in his life, which causes him to maybe not have a whole lot of filter as to what he says, but he's got a pretty good grasp on things. I was having Kennedy on my show to talk about Wichita's possible move to another conference and starting football and all that really came up in the spring. And the caller said, yeah, why are you having Mike Kennedy on? And I said, well, I explained why. And I said, he's one of the old guys like me. We just stay at our school and never go away. And he said, oh, kind of like a fungus. I said, yeah, so that's become kind of a signature moment on the show now. We're the fun guys.
That's an interesting way to look at it, I guess. Missouri State is off to a 2-0 start for the first time since 2007. And, in your opinion, how improved do the Bears look right now? And what would be considered the next step for this program coming off a 1-10 season last year?
Well, they've already taken one step, and that's winning the second game, winning a non-conference game at Murray State. I'd say the short-term goal is to win some conference games and get out of the cellar and kind of start moving toward the middle of the league. And then obviously the eventual goal is to get to the top, which is very, very hard to do in this football conference.
Yeah.
But I think particularly on defense, it's almost like night and day from last year. And Dave Steckel was a Marine and a very successful defensive coach at Mizzou and various other places, was with Gary Pinkel at Toledo and went with him the whole 14 years at Mizzou. I think it was almost like a military boot camp that they broke them completely down to build them back up again. It was almost like they taught them to play football from the start. The thing about Missouri State football is, for the most part, it's not been horrible. It's been mediocre. And some would say, well, mediocre is horrible because the goal is to win championships, and we probably need to break out of that mediocrity. So, I mean, Terry Allen's next to last team was 6-5 and was within maybe one game of tying for second and making the playoffs in the Valley. The last year, not as good, and then he was gone and Steck came in. But defensively, whereas last year seemed like they'd be 10 yards out of position, and when they were there, they wouldn't make the tackle. And now in the first two games this year, we see them rotating and communicating, and the defense working together. And, the closer you can keep the other team to zero, the better chance you have to win. And I think that defense particularly is improved and hopefully will serve the team well during the conference season.
The Bears' last conference title, it obviously came back in 1990, and certainly rebuilding is a process. But what stands out about the approach so far that Coach Steckel and his staff have taken? And you touched a little bit on his Marine background and defensive background.
Very resolute, and he's got a plan, and he believes in the plan, and he's going to follow through with the plan. And everybody's got a plan. But we sometimes see them come to fruition. I mean, I am a huge Kansas City Royals fan. My son and I have shared so many great moments, and the greatest being last year.
Yeah.
Day 4 came in, and they were lower than low in 2006. And the fans got tired of hearing about the process. But the process got them 2 World Series the last 2 years. So if you stay with your process, first it's got to be a good process. And then you do have to adjust if circumstances cause you to. But Steck believes in what he's doing and never batted an eye at all the adversity last year. And hopefully, and I believe that over time, that process is going to get him and the program where it wants to go.
It's interesting that you bring up the Royals. That's something I was actually going to ask you about, is what the emotions of being a longtime Royals fan have been, because I had heard you were a very devout Kansas City fan.
Devout is a good word because almost like a religion in our family. With the Bears and with the Chiefs, those are my jobs, and I'm very passionate about them. But with the Royals, I get to just be a fan. And brought my son up here in Cardinal country. Wasn't easy. All the years the Royals were losing 100 games, and we'd be, 15,000 people at the ballpark and on a Saturday night. I'll never forget 2003. The Royals had kind of a fluky good year. My son then would have been, he was born in 1985, so he would have been 18. We were Friday night in September, and it was cool, and the stadium was full, and everybody was wearing blue. And he said, "Dad, I've never seen this before." I said, "Son, it used to be like this all the time." Mm-hmm. And it's that way again. So we were just in Boston 3 weeks ago and saw him play on Sunday night baseball at Fenway Park.
That's awesome.
It's something that's been very, very gratifying, and it goes beyond sports, and that it goes back to what we were saying about Stack. This can be true of anything in life. If you're experiencing adversity, but you stay positive and you have a plan, you carry through the plan, and that plan comes to fruition. And that's what happened with the Royals, and hopefully that's going to happen with Stack and the Bears.
I'm curious where you feel like you are at your best. Is it when you're doing play-by-play? Is it when you are hosting the pregame and postgame shows for the Chiefs? Or is it when you're doing your nightly radio show? Where do you feel like you're strongest?
Wow. Like a lot of people, I got into this business to do the play-by-play. It became evident at an early age that my athletic ability was slim to none and was not going to be in my future to be an athlete. So I thought the next best thing to do would be to talk about the athletes. And so I studied the sportscasters when I was growing up. Radio, the typical story of the radio under the pillow listening to baseball games from distant places late at night, and the TV announcers as well. So that's what I got into it for. And that has always been my focus, is to do the play-by-play. The talk shows then kind of started in the 70s, and first one I heard was in Dallas at KRLD when I was in college, and I was fascinated by it. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, KMOX is really the gold standard, I think, of the way they do talk shows. KCMO in Kansas City started one in the 1980s. So I've really enjoyed doing that. I mean, it's a nightly challenge to fill 2 hours in an era where everybody has usually two hosts and a producer. I'm by myself. I'm on remote. It's just me. I get my own guests. If the phone's not ringing, I have to talk till it does, or until the show ends, one or the other. That's the people ask me about preparation. Preparation's constant. I'm always listening to other shows, to national shows, to local shows. I'm figuring I'm going to glean something that I might be able to recall and use during my show. And then the Chief studio work, and that's interesting because when I was in Dallas, I did the same thing for the Cowboys for 3 years. This is when Tom Landry was still the coach. And honestly, it was a little bit of a pain because it was a lot of extra work that was on weekends and during the week preparing for the weekends. Mm-hmm. And now, much later in my career, to do that again, it's very, very gratifying. And, I probably, it's hard to rank them because I enjoy doing all three, but the studio work with the Chiefs has honestly brought me a lot of recognition back in my home area where I'm from. Everybody's a Chiefs fan, and again, having a chance to work with such great people as Mitch Holtis and Dan Israel and Kendall Gammon and Lynn Dawson, it's really a thrill.
You recently, from what I heard, became a granddad. Yep. How has that experience changed your life?
Well, it's wonderful. She's a year old. Her mother, our daughter-in-law, was in town last night because she's a recruiter for her company in Kansas City, and they're at a job fair at Missouri State as we speak. So my daughter and I, my wife is helping her parents move, so she's not here, but my daughter and I had a chance to be with our daughter-in-law last night, and we see Callan quite a bit because I'm in Kansas City every weekend, and depending on their schedule. So it really is a gratifying thing, and she's a sweetheart.
It's great. Being grandparents is so much fun. My parents always talk about that.
Yeah.
Who would you consider your most interesting interview and why?
Oh boy. Really hard to say. I mean, when I was in Dallas, wow. I mean, I would look on the other side of the glass from my little office. Oh, there's Martina Navratilova, or there's Pete Maravich. People of that era. I did get to interview Pete Maravich on the Dallas station one time, and that was really interesting. Bill Verdon is a local Springfield guy that was a Major League Rookie of the Year, manager of 4 teams. I've had him on several times. Larry Nimmers is a transplanted local guy that was an NFL referee, and when we have him on, he's one of the more popular guest because every week there are rules questions about what happened in the NFL, and he's very articulate in answering those. Now, I had 2 encounters with Reggie Jackson back in the day, neither of which really was airable, but one made the radio station Christmas party in Dallas because he told me exactly what I could do with my radio, my glasses, my microphone, and my tape recorder because he took exception to my line of questioning after his team had lost one night. So I guess I'd say that's the most memorable interview, but one that never saw the light of air.
I've actually heard that from other people too, that he's not the easiest person, or he wasn't to work with from a media standpoint.
When he was on national TV, he would turn on the charm and just be a great fellow. But you get to see what people are really like after a loss in the locker room, and sometimes it's not pretty.
If you had the chance to call any sporting event with any broadcast partner, what would it be, and who would you want alongside you in the booth?
Boy. Well, I mean, I'd probably be intimidated with Bob Costas or Vin Scully, who's about to retire and the greatest of all time. He just makes poetry when he opens his mouth. It's unbelievable, and his frame of reference. Ryan Lefevre is a guy that I've gotten to really like and admire. He's been with the Royals since 1999. Was very raw when he started out, and he's just got a great way about him of combining the baseball and good humor. I guess, calling the 7th game of the World Series with Ryan Lefevre and the Royals being in it would be my number one.
Do you have a signature call or a catchphrase? And if so, what is it?
Not really. I mean, Snell at Bradley got the mascot named after his signature call, Kaboom. And, the late Scott Miller at North Dakota State was Oh My, which was borrowed from Dick Enberg. I really don't. I guess on 3-pointers in basketball, a big 3-pointer, I'll use bang. It just comes out. It's not really something that is tied to me. That's not really clever or creative. My home run call in baseball is pretty much the same as Denny Matthews, which is the same as Vin Scully. And so I think those are 2 pretty good role models for that. A lot of what Denny does is modeled after Vin Scully, and the average listener doesn't know that, but I do.
Since you call all 3 sports for the Bears, do you have a favorite? Is it baseball? I mean, you mentioned that you're, such a long-time loyal Royals fan.
I just say whatever is in season. We're most closely identified at Missouri State with basketball, and that's where there have been some great moments. Right up there near the top of my list was 2011 when the Bears won the Missouri Valley Conference Championship at JQH Arena on the final day against Wichita State, confetti coming down from the ceiling. A wonderful, wonderful day. One that, when you build up for those things, usually the reality doesn't live up to the build up. Well, that one did. So that was really great. going to the Sweet 16 when Steve Alford was the coach, and playing Duke at the Meadowlands in New Jersey. And we were 2 points down, I think, at the 8-minute timeout of the first half. And a St. Louis Post-Dispatch writer was sitting next to me, and during the break, he leaned over and said, I got to give Duke credit. They're hanging in there with you guys pretty well. I ended up winning by 17, I think. But some great memories with basketball. Football really flows the best. You call the play, your color man analyzes the play, you call the next play. Now, so many teams have gone to no huddle hurry up now, that's made the timing difficult because sometimes there's not time between plays. And then baseball really is my favorite sport, but it's maybe the most challenging at times because of the dead time. So I really, as far as the call, don't have a favorite. It's just whatever's in season.
Well, Art, is there anything I haven't asked you that you would like to share?
Not really. Just love life. I'm very blessed to have been able to do what I do for a living all these years and have the variety of experiences. I obviously love going to games. I love the preparation. Fridays during Chiefs season are kind of challenging because we're on conference calls and I'm writing scripts and I'm making my NFL picks for Sports Talk that day. I've gotten my Missouri State stuff done early in the week. I try to do the visiting team's depth chart maybe by Tuesday.
Okay.
We have a coach's show on Tuesday night, and I've got that ready for that. But time management is something that you have to do in a lot of things, but particularly in this. But I've been very, very fortunate to do the things I've done.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. I feel almost honored that I got to be the person to introduce you to Skype.
Well, I appreciate that, Kelly, and we will look forward to future sessions.
I'm sure I'll see you during basketball season when you guys come to Carbondale.
You bet. We'll look forward to that. Say hello to Coach Henson for us, one of our favorites.
I will, absolutely.